Welcome to Using Intelligent Agents to Encourage Students, presented by the Office of Online Learning at Nashville State Community College. First, I want to talk about what is an intelligent agent. Intelligent Agent is a tool in D2L that scans your course for learner activity and sends a pre-populated response based on that activity or lack of activity. These pre-populated responses are emails created by you that D2L sends to students when criteria is or is not, depending on your choice, satisfied. Intelligent agents can be created to send email notifications when students have or have not accessed content, scored a certain amount on a quiz, or submitted or not submitted to an assignment Dropbox. What does the result of an intelligent agent look like for a student? It looks like an email that a student receives in their D2L email account. As you can see, the email comes from the professor, the name that you put into that field, and we will learn how to do that in just a second. It goes to the student's NSCC eLearn email address. You can see there the date that was sent. There is a subject line. In this case, it's a low syllabus quiz score. And then there is the actual email. And again, you create the subject line and the email for the intelligent agent that you want. In this email, it's important to note that I've told the student why they are receiving the email. So in that first paragraph, it says, I see you scored less than 70% on the syllabus quiz. Remember, the syllabus is a document that includes all our class policies and answers frequently asked questions. You can return to the syllabus anytime throughout the semester to remind yourself of policies for late assignments, descriptions of assignment expectations, and more. So again, in that first paragraph, I've put in the reason why I've reached out to the student. In the second paragraph, it's really important that I put my contact information in there for the student, because eventually my hope is that the student will reach out to me or take some kind of action to improve whatever the performance was that prompted this intelligent agent. Of course, you can also create intelligent agents that congratulate students, and in that case, you would want the student to know what they did that was worth congratulating and encourage them to keep up that behavior. Back to that second paragraph, it's important that we include contact information so the student knows how to reach out to us if they want to. In this case, I put my email address that's outside of D2L. I've put my office phone number, and I've included my office hours, just as a reminder to the student that I am available. This is what the intelligent agent result looks like for the student. So what does the result look like for a faculty member, for an instructor? The intelligent agent page is actually a grid. It has, as you can see here, 4 columns. The first column is the agent column, and this is where all the intelligent agents are listed. When I took this picture, I had 4. The second column there is the results of the last run. It tells me exactly how many students the intelligent agent identified. Then in that third column, we've got the last run date. It tells me when the intelligent agent last ran. And then in that fourth column, it tells me what the next run date is for the intelligent agent. What I like to point out here, particularly in the second column in the results of last run, is that these links are hyperlinks. And so when I click on, for example, that 9 users identified, then what I see is a list of the students who actually were identified by the intelligent agent. And then as you can see in that second column, it tells me what action was taken. And the action is always going to be that an email was sent. And that's the email that we compose and enter into the intelligent agent, which we'll do here in just a second. Again, you can see that that email sent phrase is hyperlinked. So if I wanted to remind myself what the email said, I could actually click on that hyperlink and it would tell me, it would remind me what email I had created. So that's what it looks like for the instructor. So the next step then is planning the intelligent agent. As with many things in D2L, knowing what I want to do ahead of time actually helps me implement it in D2L. So a lot of the work happens on the front end, on the planning end. And I've narrowed it down to 3 steps. The first is, who do I want the intelligent agent email to come from? And what I mean here is, what name do I want the intelligent agent email to come from, and what email address do I want to set into the reply to field? The second step is, what action do I want the intelligent agent to respond to? So do I want it to respond to a student having logged into a course or a student not having logged into a course? Do I want it to respond to a low quiz score, or do I want it to respond to a high quiz score? It's almost like the sky is the limit when it comes to the range of intelligent agents we can implement, as you'll see here in just a minute. But it does help to know, what intelligent agent do I want to implement before we actually start the process. And then the third step is, what do I want the email that the intelligent agent sends to say? So we want to go ahead and craft our subject line and craft our body text so that we can just plug that straight into the intelligent agent. So these are 3 things that I like to think about before I actually begin creating the intelligent agent in D2L. All right, so let's say that I have done all those things and I'm ready to create the intelligent agent. I will go into the course where I want to create the intelligent agent. In this case, I have a training course where I can create examples. And I'm going to go to Edit Course right here at the beginning of the navigation bar. So I click on Edit Course. This edit course page is divided into sections, as you can see. I'm going to scroll down to communication because intelligent agents are considered a communication tool. So once I'm in the communication section, I can see the intelligent agents hyperlink. I could go ahead and I click on intelligent agents. Now, as you can see, I have a list of intelligent agents because I've been playing around and creating some. The first thing that I want to do, remember, is I want to set up who my intelligent agent comes from and the reply email. So to do that, I'm going to go to Settings up here in the upper right hand corner. See that Settings gear? And I'm going to click that hyperlink, and it brings me to the intelligent agent setting page. Now, if you are doing this for the first time, your radio button is probably already selected for Use the System Defaults. And so that's the name that the email is going to come from, and this is the email that this is the email set up for the automated reply to response. We want to change that, so go ahead and select the Set Custom Values for this course radio button, and in this field you can put whatever name you want. You can put English 1010 faculty. If you're creating a master course, you could literally put Bugs Bunny in there and that would be the name that it would come from. So whatever name you put in here is the name that the student will see that the intelligent agent came from. The reply to address needs to be an internal D2L email address. Again, at Nashville State, we have our D2L email kind of inside itself. So you want to use your D2L reply to email address there. And then when you're ready, click Save. The page refreshes and we are back to the main agent list page. Again, you can see I have several agents. That's just because I've been able to create several in planning and in these training sessions. So now I'm ready to actually create an agent. So I'm going to click New. I want to create a new agent, so I'm going to click the New button. And that's going to bring me to the new agent page. What I'm going to do on this page is I'm going to complete all 3 sections, and then the last thing I'm going to do is click Save and Close. So let's scroll back up to the top and just start at the top. Alright, so for my agent name, let's say I'm going to reach out to students who have not submitted essay to draft. I'm going to create an agent to reach out to students who have not yet submitted their essay to draft. If I want, I like to keep these titles as specific as possible. If you wanted to, you could be even more specific by clicking the drop down arrow next to the edit description descriptor here and actually type in exactly what that agent is for. The agent is enabled checkbox has already been checked. We want to keep that checked. We want the agent to be live or enabled, so we want to keep that box checked. And now I'm in section 1. The first thing I need to do in section 1 is to determine who do I want the intelligent agent to go to. Do I want it to go to all users visible in the class list, or do I want it to go to users with specific roles? And the answer is I want it to go to users with specific roles. And in this case, I only want it to go to people in the course with the role of banner_student. This is because there could be other faculty members in the course, there could be other people from your department in your course, and you don't necessarily want them receiving an intelligent agent email because they haven't submitted a draft or they haven't completed a quiz. In this case, we only want banner students receiving our intelligent agent emails. So go ahead and use the radio button for users with specific roles and check the checkbox for banner_student. Then I scroll down, and the next choice I need to make is right here. I have a choice to make among these 3 options: login activity, course activity, or release conditions. And I can only choose one of these, and let me describe what these are. Login activity is whether the user has actually logged into D2L overall. I don't see me using this a whole lot because I just don't have an opportunity to reach out to students who have or have not logged into D2L. This one is just not one that I see me using a whole lot. But if I did need to, I would click that checkbox, and then I would decide do I want to notify the user if they have not logged in for a certain amount of time, or do I want to congratulate the user if the user has logged in during a certain amount of time. Again, this is just not one that I anticipate using a whole lot. So let me go on to course activity. Course activity refers to whether or not the student has enrolled in your actual, not enrolled, excuse me, has logged into your actual course. So if you wanted to reach out to a student, let's say it's the beginning of the semester has started and the user has not accessed the course yet in the last 5 days, you could create an email that says, "Hi, welcome to the semester. We have begun, and I noticed that you haven't logged in. Please do go ahead and log in and begin with the Start Here materials and read the syllabus," or whatever documents you have that's important for the students to read as they're getting started. If you wanted to reward somebody for logging in and just say congratulations, welcome, glad you're here, then that would be the user has accessed the course during the past ever how many days radio button, and you could put ever how many days you wanted to in that field. All right, my favorite one though is release conditions. I like to set up intelligent agents based on students' activities actually inside the course. And for this one, I wanted to create an intelligent agent for students who have not yet turned in their essay to draft. So I click that create and attach button, and that opens up a create a new release condition window. It's going to ask me two things. The first one is which condition type. I am looking for an assignment Dropbox type. Because I am looking for students who have not submitted to the Dropbox. So I scroll down to Assignment Dropbox and I select the No Submission to Dropbox selection. And then it says, well, Heather, I need to know another piece of information, which actual Dropbox folder. And I'm going to say the SA2 draft Dropbox folder. So there I've answered my two questions, no submission to the Dropbox, and in particular the SA2 Dropbox folder, and I click create. And when I do that, the condition is populated there underneath the release conditions submenu here. If I had made a mistake, all I would have to do is click the X and that would go away, and I could just restart by clicking create and attach and go through that process again. All right. Once I've created my condition, then I go to step 2, actions. First decision that I need to make here is do I want the intelligent agent to take action only the first time the agent's criteria are satisfied for a user, or do I want it to take action every time the agent is evaluated and the agent's criteria are satisfied for a user? So let's say that I wanted the students to turn in that SA2 submission to the Dropbox. If I wanted to remind them every day until they did it, I could say take action every time the agent is evaluated. In this case, I only want to send a reminder once. It's best practice to be judicious with our use of intelligent agents. We don't want to inundate students with intelligent agents. We don't want them getting used to the fact that they come in every time they do something. So in this case, I'm going to say just remind them once. And what do I want to happen? I want an email to go out. So I'm going to check the checkbox next to send an email when the criteria are satisfied. All right, now here is where it gets really fun. What we want to do is include something called a replacement string, so the intelligent agent knows exactly what student email to use in the to field. So to do that, I'm going to type a opening curly Q. That's it's a shift opening bracket, opening curly Q, and then I'm going to type in the words initiating user. Make sure I spelled that correctly. Initiating user, close curly bracket. And what that does is it tells the intelligent agent to populate the email address of the student you've identified. All right, if I ever forget, I actually have a cheat sheet for my initiating user string. I don't have that memorized, but if I ever did forget, I could click this, what special email addresses can I use, and it reminds me right there, and I can just Control C to copy that and Control V to paste that right there. So there's my cheat sheet if I need it. In here, I'm going to include whatever subject I want. So in this case, it's going to be please submit essay to draft. And then I want to write dear. And then I'm going to use my second replacement string. And this one is my opening curly Q bracket, initiating user first name, close curly Q bracket, and a comma. And what this does is it automatically populates this student's first name, gives it that personal touch. Again, if I didn't have my printed cheat sheet in front of me, I could click this, what replace strings can I use in the subject and message? And that opens up a pop-up window that reminds me of all of my possibilities. I like to keep it simple and use the initiating user first name, but you have lots of options if you wanted to add things like the course name, the last date the student entered the course, and what have you. All right, so at this point I would enter the body text of my intelligent agent, something like, as you know, submitting first drafts allows me to provide feedback on your writing process. And then I would continue on saying, I have not received your draft yet. Please submit it as soon as possible. If you have any questions, please contact me at, and here's where I would include my email, my phone number, and my office hours. Sincerely, Professor Ripito, or whatever they call you. So again, the highlights here are to use the initiating user replacement string to let the intelligent agent know what email to populate, and to use the initiating user first name so that you've got that personal first name touch. In your first paragraph, you want to let them know why they are receiving the email, and in the second paragraph, you want to make sure that they have your contact information if they need to reach out, because there may be some reason why they haven't submitted that draft. Okay, if I wanted to, I could attach a file here. I could also hyperlink if I wanted to hyperlink something in the in the text body. I could write, please submit to the Dropbox as soon as possible, and I could highlight and link to that Dropbox Essay 2 draft. Again, I can add an attachment if I want to. I always keep the HTML button selected because we are able to do that these days. And that is all of Section 2. Section 3 has to do with scheduling. When do I want the intelligent agent to run? If I wanted it to run on a schedule, I would create I would click the checkbox for use schedule, and then I would need to click update schedule. So let's say I wanted to run daily for a week, from now until next week. Then I would have my has start date, has end date, as it would populate a calendar, pre-populates today, and auto-populates for a week, which is how I like it. So in this case, my intelligent agent for my SA2 Dropbox submissions is going to run daily, every day for a week starting today, and then I would click update. That's everything that I need to do. I have submitted all of the answers for Section 1, Section 2, and Section 3. And the last thing that I do is click Save and Close. I can now see that my agent has populated here in my list. The agents are listed in alphabetical order. It was easy for me to find the new one because it's the one that does not have any results from the last run or a last run date. I see that it is scheduled to run tonight, Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. If I wanted to do a practice run to see how many students would be notified if I were to run the agent right now, I could click this drop down arrow next to the agent's title and click practice run, which I'm going to do right now. It gives me a confirmation window. Would you like to try a practice run of the agent? Have not submitted SA2 draft. And yes, I would. So I'm going to run that. When I click that, it gives me a new window that says your request for a practice run of agent have not submitted SA draft at this moment has been submitted. An email will be sent to the account, and this is my email address inside of D2L, when your request has been completed. You can then check the results of the practice run from the agent list page. I'm going to go ahead and click Done here. The page refreshes, and I can see here that it has run just now and that 10 users were identified. So this again was just a practice run, but if it had been a real run, then it would have identified 10 users. I can click that hyperlink and it gives me a list of all of the students in my class. Because this was a practice run, no action was taken. If I wanted to actually manually run this right now and not wait until tonight, I could click this drop down arrow and I'm going to click Run Now. It gives me a confirmation pop-up window. Do you want to manually run the agent right now? And I'm going to say yes. I've decided I want to go ahead and run this agent right now. It gives me the confirmation page again. The manual runs actually take a little bit longer. You'll see up here when it is finished, you'll have a new email. I'm going to click Done. Have not submitted SA2 draft. 10 users were identified and it ran just now. Let's see if that's the actual agent. And it is. And the reason that I know that's the actual agent is because an email was sent. If I want to remind myself what email went out, I can click that field. I can click that hyperlink and the email pops up. Hope you've enjoyed learning about intelligent agents. If you have any questions, please call the Office of Online Learning at 615-353-3636. Email us at online.learning@nscc.edu or come visit us in the Weld Building, rooms 100, 101, 102, and 103.